Hey, I'm Jeff from Armored Brush Minis, and this is the first in a series of videos showing you how I'll be painting my new Dwarf army for Warmaster Revolution. I wanted to include some unpainted shots of the units I'll be working on, just to give you an idea of what a 1500 point Dwarf army can look like. I'll include the army list in the description, and all of the models here are sculpts from Forest Dragon. I'll include a link to Forest Dragon's Patreon in the description as well. In this series, I hope to show you some straightforward techniques to get these guys ready for battle. On the units with a lot of armor, I use Lead Belcher spray from Citadel, but I'll get into that more in their own videos. First units we'll be painting up are Slayers. They're an iconic unit in any Warhammer or Warmaster Dwarf army, and one of my personal favorites. Wearing very little armor and wielding a multitude of different axes, these Doomseekers have sworn an oath to avenge some great shame in their lives, shaving their heads all except for a dyed bright orange mohawk and beard, in hopes of attracting attention and finding a worthy death in battle. For a majority of these models, I'll be using speed paints from the Army Painter. These are from the original speed paint set, which I've heard has reactivation issues, though I didn't seem to have any issues with these guys. I started with a black spray primer, and then a second dusting of white over the models. This is called a zenithal prime. It's supposed to highlight where the light would normally land on the subject, giving shadowy recesses and brighter high spots in one simple method. Though I'm not much of an authority on it, I thought it would give these guys a bit more dimension, so I gave it a shot. Here I'm applying a coat of Crusader Skin for the flesh on these models. It had a pretty good result, however I did go back and do a second coat later. This gave them a bit of a tanned look, which I think suits them better as the shirtless berserkers they are, but I'll show you the difference when it comes up. Next up on these guys were their iconic dyed crests and beards. These were done with Fire Giant Orange. I was pretty careful to avoid getting this onto the flesh, as when I did, they took on a bit of a Donald Trump glow. Since speed paints tint any surface they settle on, they wound up looking a bit orange if I didn't move quickly and carefully. That's kind of the trick with speed paints or Citadel contrast paints. It saves time in that it's a 1 or 2 coat process, but you have to be pretty tidy if you're going to be using the more translucent colors. Also be sure to try and follow the mustaches and ends of the beards. On a lot of these models, the beards flow under their arms, down past their belts, since they're more in a running pose than anything else. It's also pretty easy to miss the odd piece here and there. That being said, I still did miss a bunch of these trailing beards. It was easy enough to just dab a bit of paint on them as I noticed and move on. Next I painted the weapon hafts with Abaddon Black from Citadel. It is a traditional opaque black paint, different from the speed paints. This is the kind of stuff I normally use, but for these guys and all the intricate parts, I thought the speed paints on those details would save time. And yes, as you probably noticed, their pants are blue. I apparently forgot to start the camera when I did that detail, but it was done much the same way as the hair and skin. I used a single coat of Highlord Blue on them. It had really good coverage, and I also think it complements the crest and beard color well, turning out great. Anyways, the halves of the axes were really inset with the rest of the flesh, beards, and pants here. Of course, feel free to switch between your workhorse brush and one with a finer point here so you can be tidy around other details. I'm really happy with the results I've been getting with my Wargamer Regiment brush from Army Painter recently, and it's turned into my main all-rounder these days. It was after the axe hafts that I added a second coat of Crusader Skin to the flesh too. You'll be able to see the difference in the next clip. I think it really added some definition to these guys, and covered up a bit of the graininess left behind from my pretty amateur zenithal priming joke. For the axe blades, I went back to my regular metallic acrylics here, and used Iron Hand Steel from Citadel. It's my go-to color for steel, as it's bright enough to really sell a nicely maintained metal look, but not so bright as to be polished. It allows you to either shade down and keep it looking decent, or highlight up and make it look really sharp and well maintained. I think this step really made these models come to life. Some of the dwarves here have their axes held high, ready to swipe down and cleave their foes, while some have it down and have their offhand up, challenging the enemy to come find out what Slayers are all about. The next detail is a small one, but synonymous with Slayers, and that is the golden jewelry they wear. These I painted with Retributor Armour from Citadel, another metallic, opaque, acrylic paint. When Slayers take the Slayer Oath, it is because of some great shame. A shame passed through the generations in the case of the Slayer King Ungrim Ironfist, or in the case of famous Slayer engineer Malachi Makaisen, being too radical an inventor, as seen as insane by other, more level-headed dwarves. Slayers are cagey, and almost never speak of their shame. It is between them and their god alone. As long as the dwarf sees their shame as something that can only be atoned for in death, they go to the Slayer's shrine and swear the oath. As such, they give up claim to hearth and home, can have no children, hold no titles, and must seek a worthy doom in battle. Gold, however, is needed to buy food, drink, and a place to sleep from time to time. Slayers will usually keep jewelry they find on the battlefield, picked from an ogre horde, or inside of a troll's cave. They'll typically have bracelets, weird clasps, rings, and chains that they know are worth something. This can buy them what they need until they fulfill their oath and go to the halls of their ancestors. Moving on to another pretty small detail here, being a small pouch on a few models' hips that I painted with dark wood speed paint. I also use this on the strap that holds the drums of the musician of the command strip, which you'll see in a minute. So here I started working on the command strips for the two units. The strip on the left has a drummer as a musician and a shield totem with a big orc skull on top. On the right, the musician has a large horn, and the totem is crossed axes, while the champion in the middle holds a decapitated troll head as a trophy. These strips of Slayers in particular really draw the eye, so I'm trying to make the color variations pop here. For the red shield, ribbons, banner poles, and troll's tongue, I use Slaughter Red speed paint. This is a really punchy red color, and is different enough from the crests to really stand out. For the blue details, I went back to Highlord Blue, same as the pants. On the troll's head, I used 2 coats of Plasmatic Bolt to really sell the teal color. Bone details are done with 2 coats of Pallid Bone, the drum skin with dark wood, while the rims and backs of the shield are painted with Iron Hand Steel and Retributor Armour. The musician's horn and bolts holding the totems together were painted with Castellax Bronze from Citadel. I really like this color, and the bronze-ish sort of coppery tone looks really cool in all around the silver, gold, and orange details. For touch-ups, I came in with some Nuln Oil from Citadel, just to give some definition to the totems, chains, and musicians' instruments. This helps to break up a lot of the side-by-side metallics, and I like to put a good dot of color in the opening of the horn to make it look a bit more believable. For the bases, I used a dark mud texture paint, dry brushed with a light brown, and added some tiny tufts. I'll do a dedicated video of how I tackle Warmaster bases in the future, so watch out for that if you're interested in these sort of bases. And there you have it. After basing and a coat of matte varnish, 2 fully painted units of Slayers ready for my Warmaster Revolution Dwarf army. This was my first go at using these Army Painter speed paints, and I have to say I think it worked pretty well. I need to work on my zenithal priming, and maybe a dry brush of white would have smoothed out some of their splotchiness, but overall they'll do great, and look good on the tabletop. At the end of each video in the series, I'll show you the army coming together unit by unit. It's pretty cool seeing a fully painted unit next to all the rest of the primed ones, ready to get paint. If you want to see more of my work, check out @ArmoredBrushMinis on Instagram. Please leave any feedback down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this or it was helpful, feel free to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.